believe it. My favorite time of year is here again. That's right. It's October. It's spooky season. It's horror season. It's my favorite holiday, Halloween. And of course, we are here with yet another Halloween X marathon, as well as, well, of course, 31 Days of Horror, but that's its own separate thing. Welcome, one and all, to my annual Halloween celebration that I do throughout the entire month of October because screw it, why not? What's up? What's happening? It's going to be welcome back to the University Family. I'm including this, as well as TV and movies. I'm your host, Jackson Small, and yes, it's time for another first-time watch anime review. And this time, we are diving into the highly acclaimed Netflix adaptation of Castlevania. Now, for those of you that don't know, Castlevania is my personal favorite game on the original NES. It has spookiness, it has difficulty, it has amazing gameplay, it has phenomenal music. I could talk about that game for hours, and I may or may not talk about it at the very end of this marathon, so look forward to that. But for now, we're here to talk about the anime that I've been hearing so much praise about from so many people, including both Phantom Strider and Angry Joe Show. And now it's time for me to check it out for myself, and after watching the first episode, I'm on board, but I do have some questions. So, also what's interesting about this is that unlike my recent Attack on August, where I have to do each season a year, this one, since it's 32 episodes and all 4 seasons of the original series, we're not counting Nocturne, that's going to be its own separate thing, I can literally just knock out this entire anime in 1 month. Yes, that means when we get to season 4, I'll have to start by reviewing 2 episodes at once, but it'll be worth it. So, with that long intro out of the way, let's kick off spooky season and Halloween X4 Castlevania-Thon with our first episode of the anime. Season 1, Episode 1, titled Witchblood. Well, I thought it was Witchblood, but it's actually Witchbottle. Excuse me. This first episode, I went into it obviously very excited because I had been wanting to talk about this show for a while, and I've always been looking for a perfect opportunity to finally just sit down and watch it. And, well, now we finally have that opportunity, and I gotta say, it's off to a really good start. I thought this first episode was dark, macabre, unrelentingly somber, gory, violent, and just all around very intriguing. I don't know where exactly it's going to lead, because this is based off that one Castlevania game I don't touch, Simon's Quest, but I'm still very intrigued and very excited to see where this is going to go. And despite the little relationship between Dracula and his wife being incredibly short in this show, it still feels genuine. Not to mention the voice acting is absolutely phenomenal, and I will talk about the voice acting when we get to the series finale. So, for those of you that don't know how it works by now here, what I do is that I read off the synopsis, then I read off the whole giant plot, and then I give my overall thoughts at the end. So, yeah, that's usually how we do it here. I have my camera at a slightly different angle than usual because I wanted to make sure to have the Halloween display in full view behind me. It was seriously, that thing took a whole day to get together. So, yeah, without further ado, let's dive into Castlevania, starting with the synopsis for Witchbottle. A headstrong young woman seeks out forbidden knowledge in a corrupt bishop court's disaster by enraging a legend. That's pretty much the synopsis of the episode, trying to be as intriguing and mysterious as possible. Now here's what actually happens. This is the full plot synopsis. I'm going to go into full spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled about this show, don't watch this review. Go watch the episode and then come back. But for those of you that have already seen it, let's press on together. First off, in Wallachia of 1455, yeah, I apologize, I'm going to be very bad with pronouncing things. Please don't take it the wrong way and don't get super concerned about it. Across the field are skeletons on pikes. Immediately lets you know what show you're in for. Bats fly across the bodies, but a knife pierces through one of them, wielded by a woman standing before a rather imposing castle. She inhales sharply as she knocks on the doors. As the doors slowly open, she enters, and an opulent hallway greets her. Upon entering the castle, she introduces herself as Lisa of Lupu. She is then greeted by its master, Vlad Dracula Tepes. Yes, this is Dracula, and I gotta say, this is already one of the coolest and most badass versions of Dracula I've ever seen in animation. She wants to become a doctor, but the backwards inhabitants of her village have nothing to offer for her. Everyone says that the master of the castle has advanced knowledge of the new science, which she believes in. Vlad asks what Lisa has to offer in exchange for his knowledge. She replies that from what she can see, Vlad doesn't travel much, and she could teach him to explore, understand, and perhaps even like the world outside of his castle. Taken aback, he admits that he doesn't have much faith in humanity, though he confesses she is not like most of the humans that he has encountered. She rejoins that humanity would benefit immensely if she were to allow to share his knowledge with it. Start with me, she proposes, and I'll start with you. With a surprised laugh, Vlad motions her into his laboratory, admitting, I think I might like you. And unfortunately, that's the only scene of romance between these two that we get in the entire episode. Now, I don't know if this is the end of the romance that we see in the series. We might see flashbacks or something, but these two end up getting married, and Lisa ends up becoming Dracula's bride. But we then fast forward to Targovis, Wallachia of 1475, where Lisa is burned at the stake on the order of the bishop, who consider her a witch. The bishop mistook the medical implements and herbs in her home, this very same she had received from Dracula years before, for witchcraft. With her last breath, she cries out for Dracula, now her husband, to not seek revenge against the city and beseech her love to not give in to the same hatred born of ignorance as the other humans. The bishop decries her as she burns, declaring to the horrified crowd that the witch is calling out to Satan, her master. Yes, we see Lisa burned at the stake almost immediately, and we even see her body fall to ash at the very end. Brutal. Like, that immediately lets you know that this is not going to be a show for kids to watch. Don't watch this show. If you're a kid, don't watch this show. It is brutal and violent in every single way, shape, and form. Lupu. Dracula returns from traveling abroad and arrives at their cottage only to find it in ruins. After being burnt down, he learns of his wife's fate from Miss Dijuvara? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. One of Lisa's patients, visiting the house with flowers in hand. Miss Dijuvara says the church condemned Lisa as a witch, but she refuses to believe it and instead wishes to pay her respects. In a rage, Dracula warns I'm just going to call her Vara, Mrs. Vara, to take her family and flee from Wallachia, his last kindness to any member of humanity, in his wife's honor, before vanishing in a whirlwind of flames before her. In other words, Dracula is pissed. Now we go to Targovista. In the city square, the fire begins to die, leaving nothing of Lisa but a blackened skeleton that turns to ash. Again, brutal. It's only the first death in the show, and it's already brutal. The mayor of Targovista congratulates the bishop for his vigilance, remarking that his actions have assured him a place in heaven. The bishop brushes off the compliments, saying he would prefer to stay on earth and continue his holy work, since there is so much evil in Wallachia, not to mention the rest of the world, that even a man as pious as he could not root it all out in one lifetime. Especially a man, he says darkly, saddled with a less pious superior like the archbishop. Yeah, this is one of those shows that kind of goes into the corruption of the church thing that Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame touched on. And I don't think it's done as well here as it is there, but at the same time, it's only the first episode, so I shouldn't judge it too harshly. They are then interrupted as Dracula's visage appears in smoke and flames over the pyre, demanding to know what happened to his wife. The bishop tries to convince the people that Dracula isn't real, just a fiction of who justified the practice of black magic, and his appearance is nothing to fear. Only further proof that Lisa was a witch. Dracula is even more enraged by this, telling the crowd that his wife was a woman of science, and the one reason in the world for him to tolerate humanity's stink upon the land. By taking her from him, he promises they have signed their own death warrants. He allows the people 1 year to make peace with their lord, after which he will return with an army and purge all of humanity from Wallachia. It's an intense scene, and really my description does not do it justice. Seriously, go see it for yourself. It is an amazing scene. Dracula's castle. Dracula prepares to summon an army from hell, but his son Alucard confronts him. He begs his father to reconsider his course of action, urging him to focus on his revenge on the one responsible for Lisa's death rather than on the innocent. Dracula retorts that there are no innocents. Any one of Wallachia's people could have stood up for Lisa, but instead they blindly followed the church as it murdered her. When Alucard declares that he will not let his father tarnish his mother's memory by committing genocide, Dracula flies at him in rage, grievously wounding him. We don't see a whole lot of it, but we do see him run at him, and we do see blood splatter across the wall. But Alucard being Alucard, and unfortunately, spoiler alert, being one of the main characters of the show, he's going to be fine. Then we fast forward a year to Targa Vista in 1476. A year after Lisa's death, the day of her burning is being celebrated as a festival. Outside the cathedral, the archbishop congratulates his flock, and by implication himself, for their piety and their success in earning God's love. He scoffs that the devil tried to frighten them with empty threats, but here they are 1 year later, alive and well, with nothing to fear from the devil's lies and illusions. But as he finishes speaking, the sky darkens with clouds, and blood begins to rain from the sky, turning the crowd's happiness into horror and panic. Along with the blood, droplets fall fetal corpses, looking like the failed offspring of bats and demons. It's just as gnarly and gruesome as it sounds, and we're not even done yet. The cathedral's windows shatter, raining huge shards that impale the archbishop and his priests. The archbishop has just enough life in him to look up and see flames envelop the cathedral and form Dracula's face. He says he gave the people a chance to flee, but instead of heeding his warnings, they are celebrating the day of his wife's murder. In an explosion of fire and thunder, Dracula's castle arises amid Targa Vista, disgorging an army of monsters that massacre the inhabitants and immolates the rest of the city. Dracula orders them, once Targa Vista is empty, to spread through the rest of Wallachia and kill everyone they see. It is a brutal slaughter. I don't think it's as brutal as the slaughter in, Season 1 Attack on Titan, but it is still pretty brutal. We see people sliced in half, we see heads get chomped off, we see all kinds of vicious, gory carnage. And if you're here for that, you're gonna love that. But if you're someone who's sensitive to gore, don't watch this show. Because it is going to only get worse from here, I can already tell. Especially because we're dealing with a series like Castlevania. Merdenu. In a tavern in the small town on the outskirts of Gresset, a farmer named Bosha is regaling his half-brother Kobe and the innkeeper with a story about how one of his goats and a man who really likes goats. Okay, this scene's weird and goes almost nowhere. And how Bosha gave the man his just reward with the blade of a shovel. And now he complains he's being fined by the local magistrate because the man went blind. Which is just another example of the injustices being heaped on the working class by the great and good, as he calls it. Moments later, a man named Peter, yes, it is not spelled like it is Peter, but it's pronounced Peter, so I'm just going to call him Peter. Peter comes running into the tavern, telling the patrons that Dracula's horde is now approaching Gresset. Bosha doesn't seem surprised, saying all of Wallachia's ills, from the mundane to the invasion of Dracula's army, can be blamed on old families and his so-called great houses. Like the worst of them all, the Belmonts, who everyone knows dealt with monsters and black magic. Meanwhile, not far from a group, a man sits alone at a table, indulging in ale and half listening to Bosha's rant on. But when Bosha mentions the Belmonts, the man curses under his breath and tries to hide his face. In other words, this is our introduction to Trevor Belmont, the descendant of Simon Belmont, who killed Dracula before in the first Castlevania game. As like I said before, this anime is based off Castlevania 2. And that's pretty much the episode. It's gory, it's tragic, it is brutal, it is unrelentingly somber, but it does what it needs to do, and you do get a nice bit of gore at the end. It's not a lot, but it works. And while it does have a little bit of a tacked-on ending, I still think it is a very good starting episode to this show. That, no doubt, is only going to get better from here. So, yeah, a pretty good start. I guess all that's left now is to talk about my final thoughts. and I have them right here on my Facebook, as per usual. Time for another first-time anime marathon. Unlike with Attack on Titan, I can review the entire series in one go, since it's only 32 episodes in total. It's a simple, straightforward pilot episode that sets up the conflict ahead with Dracula's wife, burned at the stake as punishment for witchcraft, and him beginning to take out his revenge upon it. Oh, and the main character Trevor Belmont showing up at the end is a pretty tacked-on cliffhanger. However, it's gorgeously animated, brutal, dark, unrelentingly somber, and fantastically voice-acted. Not to mention, this is already one of the most badass Draculas I've ever seen in animation. From his look, to his voice, to his actions, this Dracula is one you do not want to mess with. It's an all-around solid first episode that I'm pretty sure is only going to get better with each episode that will continue onward. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get to the final verdict for Witchbottle, the first episode of the first season of the Castlevania anime from Netflix, which is going to be a 7 out of 10. I think a 7 is entirely fair here, because the ending is a bit tacked on. It is very simple, it is very straightforward, but it has more than enough to hook you in and see where it's gonna go. Not to mention Gorehounds, you're gonna be very pleased with this because it has plenty of that for you. So, yeah, it's a solid first episode for the show, and I have no doubt it's only going to get better from here. So, yep, that's gonna do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. And I'll see you guys next time when we tackle the next episode of Castlevania with Season 1, Episode 2, Necropolis.